When Jason Turner walked into the courtroom with a confident stride and a $300 an hour lawyer at his side, it wasn't to defend himself against a crime or settle a business dispute. It was to sue his best friend. The tabloids would later call it the pettiest lawsuit of the year. But for Jason, this was personal. 3 months earlier, Jason and Mark had been best friends since college. They were practically brothers, sharing rent weekends and inside jokes that spanned a decade. Mark was a godfather to Jason's dog. Jason helped Mark get through a nasty breakup last year. The bond seemed unbreakable, until Jason broke something else. Her name was Marissa, a marketing executive with sharp eyes, a sharper tongue, and zero tolerance for dishonesty. She and Jason had been together for nearly 2 years, even discussing moving in together. She thought she knew him, but Jason had a secret. He was sleeping with a woman from his gym, a yoga instructor named Ivy who was beautiful, flexible, and, most importantly to Jason, not Marissa. Mark found out accidentally. He was walking past the glass walls of the studio when he saw Jason and Ivy kissing behind the counter. At first, he said nothing, but guilt and anger brewed inside him. He felt like an accomplice by staying silent. So he told Marissa. He didn't dramatize it or relish the moment. He simply asked her to sit down and told her everything. Marissa left Jason that night, packed her things, and blocked his number. Jason didn't call Mark for a week. Then came the lawsuit. Present day. Your Honor, Jason's lawyer said, my client suffered emotional distress, reputational damage, and a complete sabotage of a committed relationship due to the defendant's meddling. Mark just shook his head in disbelief from the stand. He's suing me for telling the truth. Marissa was subpoenaed as a witness. She arrived in a charcoal suit, calm and composed. Did the defendant lie about anything? The judge asked. No, Marissa replied. If anything, I wish I'd found out sooner. Jason shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing. The judge wasn't impressed with Jason's argument. The courtroom murmured when she said, you don't get to sue someone for exposing your lies. But Jason pushed on, determined to punish Mark. He claimed defamation, emotional distress, even a breach of verbal trust. By the third hearing, even Jason's own lawyer looked like he regretted taking the case. 1 month later, the judge dismissed the case with prejudice. Mark walked out of the courtroom lighter than air. He didn't regret what he did. He'd chosen the hard right over the easy wrong. Jason, meanwhile, was left with a hefty legal bill, a ruined relationship, and a reputation now truly in tatters. Not because of Mark's actions, but because of his own. And the cherry on top? Marissa started dating Mark a few weeks later. Not out of revenge, but out of respect. Because Mark had told her the truth when no one else would. Moral of the story: if you don't want your secrets exposed, don't create any worth hiding. And never sue the only person who had your back, especially when you're the one who stabbed him in his. News of the bizarre lawsuit spread quickly, thanks to a local reporter who covered strange legal affairs. Social media did the rest. Memes exploded across Twitter and Instagram. One read, cheats on girlfriend, gets exposed, sues best friend, loses, best friend dates ex, still thinks he's a victim. Hashtag Jason Logic. Jason tried to lay low, but the court of public opinion had already sentenced him. His law firm, one of the top in the city, asked him to take a break, to let the noise die down. His gym canceled his membership, citing a toxic environment. And Ivy? She ghosted him weeks before the final hearing. He was utterly alone. Meanwhile, Mark and Marissa, their relationship developed slowly, with hesitation and care. Marissa didn't jump into things. She made it clear she was still healing. But Mark had always been patient. What started with coffee and long talks evolved into dinners, laughter, and eventually something neither of them expected: comfort. Mark wasn't flashy or manipulative. He didn't love bomb or brag. He simply showed up, and Marissa realized that's what she'd been missing all along. One evening, as they walked through a weekend market, Marissa turned to Mark and said, "Do you ever regret telling me?" Mark smiled faintly, only that I didn't do it sooner. Jason's final play. 6 months later, Jason tried to claw back relevance. He appeared on a low-tier podcast to tell his side of the story. dressed in a blazer and fake humility. He claimed Mark had ulterior motives all along, that he exposed the affair to steal Marissa from him. The host nodded dramatically, clearly egging him on for clicks. But it backfired. Again, because Mark didn't respond. He didn't stoop to Jason's level. And Marissa posted just one sentence on her Instagram story. Loyalty isn't about silence, it's about courage. The story went viral. 1 year later, Jason moved out of the city, citing a need to reset. No one really noticed. Mark and Marissa, still together, didn't boast or flaunt their happiness. But on the anniversary of the lawsuit's dismissal, they posted a quiet photo of them holding hands at the beach. The caption was simple: "Truth wins." And it always does. The following spring, Mark proposed to Marissa under the same cherry blossom tree where they had first taken a walk together after the lawsuit. There was no flash, no crowd, just a quiet moment filled with honesty and love. She said yes. Jason never sent congratulations. By then, he'd faded from most people's memories, reduced to whispers in old group chats and cautionary tales told over drinks. Mark didn't hold a grudge. He didn't need to. Life had already delivered the final verdict. As the wedding day came and went, surrounded by close friends and genuine smiles, Mark looked out across the crowd and thought of everything it took to get there: pain, risk, betrayal, but ultimately truth. Because sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, except your soul. And in the end, that's what matters most. Months after the wedding, Mark received a letter with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, rigid, slanted, angry even on paper. He hesitated for a second before opening it. Inside were only 2 lines, scribbled in black ink. "I still think you betrayed me, but maybe you did me a favor." Jason. There was no apology, no redemption arc, just a bitter half-admission from a man who had finally glimpsed the wreckage he caused. Mark folded the letter and quietly burned it in the backyard fire pit. He didn't need closure from Jason. He had it already, in the peaceful rhythm of his mornings with Marissa, in the way her laughter filled the kitchen, in the life they were building together based on truth. Marissa's journey. She had changed, too. The betrayal had broken something in her, but not permanently. It reshaped her. She became sharper, more self-assured, more unwilling to compromise on her worth. She joined a panel for women in business, sharing her story without names, about navigating heartbreak and finding self-respect in ashes. People listened. They saw not a victim, but a survivor. 2 years later, Jason was spotted working at a mid-tier real estate agency in a smaller town. He no longer spoke about the lawsuit or the podcast interview. When asked about his past, he'd just say it was messy and quickly change the subject. He wasn't hated, just forgotten. And sometimes that's a heavier punishment than infamy. Mark and Marissa, on the other hand, welcomed their first child, named Leo. Not after anyone famous, not for legacy, but simply because the name meant lion. A quiet nod to strength, survival, and courage. They framed one quote above his crib, hand-painted in gold lettering. "Let the truth set you free, even if it burns on the way out."